Hello, and thanks for joining me for our weekly episode of NCIA Today. I'm your host, Bethany Moore, NCIA's Deputy Director of Communications, checking in with you every Friday with updates on what's happening in the cannabis industry and here at NCIA. Happy harvest season in more ways than one. To start things off with what's happening on the policy front, I checked in with our Deputy Director of Public Policy, Rachel Kurtz-McAlaine, on the latest developments from the post office that will likely impact many operators in the cannabis industry. Let's learn more. Hey there, Rachel. Thanks for taking a few minutes to check in with us this week. In the realm of public policy, we saw some news from the U.S. Postal Office that impacts cannabis and hemp vaporization products. Gosh, never a dull moment, right?
Cannabis, never.
All right, so let's get into this PACT Act a little more. PACT stands for the Prevent All Cigarette Trafficking Act. What does cigarette trafficking have to do with us?
So, yeah, the PACT Act originally came out in 2010 just for cigarettes, and it banned all mailing of cigarettes unless you applied and got an exception for like B2B or how you were going to handle B2C. Okay. So Congress was concerned about use of e-cigarettes and vaporization, and so they then passed this law in December of last year that said that redefined cigarettes to include ENDS, electronic nicotine delivery system. And that was interpreted by USPS to include vaporization systems for, cannabis and hemp, like CBD products and stuff as well. Okay. And they put out their original draft rule and said that, and there was a lot of concern, just especially with the state laws being their own thing, and how that was going to mesh. But then they just came out with a final rule, and indeed are considering cannabis and hemp to be included in that.
Okay, got it. So interesting. It sounds like this has already gone into effect within the last week or so. And I mean, vape products are widely popular among consumers for both tobacco and cannabis products. I mean, I have a few in my purse right now. So who is this impacting in the cannabis and hemp industry? What does it really mean?
So it's pretty broad as far as the vaporization system. It not only includes the product itself, like CBD and THC, but also the vape pen or technology. So it's like the battery, the entry cartridges. I mean, if you're a manufacturer and you're ordering, a bunch of empty cartridges to fill, that is now subject to the mailing ban, unless there's an exception, or unless you find another way around mailing, like through private delivery companies. Okay. The one problem is that we're a little unclear if that applies to just flower. So if you have a vape tool that's just used to vaporize flower, then in theory it doesn't apply because it needs to be a solution. And they think that the flower is covered because you can't mail THC products already, and that's true. But CBD, then people do get mailed for that, and so it's then a little questionable. Okay, if it's just the flower, then does it fall under that? Or if you're making a system, vaporizer that just is used for flower, in theory, it wouldn't apply to that either. And they also think that they kind of covered it with, because it's drug paraphernalia, and drug paraphernalia can't be mailed. But under federal law, it's, those things aren't considered drug paraphernalia if they're going to a legal state. So, it's questionable if it's a vaporizer with dual use, you can do oil or flower, then it probably falls under that for sure. But yeah, the big question is, exactly who this is going to apply to. And that's where you really want to consult an attorney. And also, as soon as I know more, our whole coalition's kind of confused about it right now. So as soon as I know more, I'll definitely get the word out.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like it's a little confusing and some moving parts there. So in addition to operators that could be impacted, consulting their attorneys and doing what they need to do legally, is there anything they can do anything else they could possibly do in the meantime?
So I would say that, even if you're not 100% sure if it applies to you, to try to go ahead and get in an application for an exception with the Postal Service. And in the blog I wrote this week, there's some links to the final rule and the guidance they put out earlier that really explains how to get an exception, like the whole application process. USPS didn't get funds for enforcement, so it's going to be really, enforcement or application. So they weren't allowing applications until that final rule. So there's going to be a ton of people applying for those exceptions, and not that many people working there to go through them all. So it's worth going ahead and getting that in now, because it's going to take a while to go through. That's
Yeah,
all
that
I
makes
say.
sense.
And just, keep just doing your best or find alternative delivery companies.
CYA, as they say, right?
Yeah, and to be clear, the FedEx and UPS already banned it when the initially PACT Act, or the PACT Act amendment passed. They just went ahead and banned it anyway. So those aren't alternatives you can use, but there's a lot of other private companies.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thank you for staying on top of these important public policy issues in cannabis, Rachel. I appreciate it. So we'll check in with you next time there's an update.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Be sure to read more and check those links to read the ruling for yourself in her latest blog on our website. Next, as you've likely heard, we're preparing to gather in San Francisco in just a few weeks at NCIA's 7th Annual Cannabis Business Summit and Expo at the Moscone Center. We're excited to bring attendees an exclusive new treat for the senses called Bloom, a brands experience by NCIA, bringing you live cannabis plants and products to see, touch, and smell firsthand on the expo floor. Sorry, there won't be any consumption allowed on site, but no other cannabis trade show offers this unique hands-on experience. NCIA is honored to welcome our 2021 Cannabis Business keynote speaker, Troy Datcher, CEO of The Parent Company, formerly from the Clorox Company. Leading a new generation of C-suite innovators, CEO Troy Datcher, together with Mr. Beyonce himself, Chief Visionary Officer Sean Jay-Z Carter, helms a cannabis business for the post-prohibition era at The Parent Company. In an intimate fireside chat setting moderated by Adrian Farquharson, journalist and founder of Mary Magazine, Datcher will share personal stories and detail the impact he's working to make in the cannabis space. Take advantage of early bird pricing by securing your tickets today. If you're a member of NCIA, check your benefits because you're eligible for discounts on your tickets and even sometimes free tickets depending on your level of membership. Head to cannabisbusinesssummit.com and register your team to join us today. All right, final reminder here, since the deadline is this Sunday. If you're a cannabis operator, take a couple of minutes to make your voice heard in a survey being conducted by our chief economist, Bo Whitney. The survey of U.S. cannabis industry sentiment and business conditions will ultimately tell us things like what is working and what can be improved from the perspective of businesses and stakeholders in the cannabis industry. Responses are confidential and will be kept anonymous. Please complete the survey by this Sunday, October 31st. Speaking of Halloween, be sure to check out this blog by People Guru with some scary stories of cannabis compliance. Read the cautionary tale about a Massachusetts company running 3 cannabis dispensaries that found itself in quite the mess despite believing they were following protocol properly. After an 8-month investigation, the company's been ordered to pay $300,000 in restitution and penalties. Yikes, right? Learn more on our website. Make sure you're subscribed and tuning in to both of our weekly podcasts, NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice and NCIA's Cannabis Minority Report with host Khadija Adams. You can find us on Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, and iHeartRadio. In the meantime, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram to stay inspired and connected. If you're a member of NCIA, log into NCIA Connect and spark up a conversation with your fellow NCIA members and colleagues today. We'll see you next week.
Working in the cannabis space has been very exciting, and it's, I think, a different level of innovation because the industry itself isn't quite defined. So there's always a new problem to solve or a new way to solve an existing problem, or, really reapplying concepts in a very creative way.
There's 25 plus industries inside of this industry with experts from all around. And, for me, there's no other more emerging industry, than cannabis. It's a startup industry entirely made up of startup companies with 2,000 years of user product experience.
There's so many great things on our horizon, just expansion of new markets and new technology, even outside of the US. Just to know that legal recreational use came online in 2014. So that's not that far back. And so to think that we're here now is pretty exciting and pretty amazing. I'm looking forward to the future.
I'm just really surprised at where we are now, having kind of grown up with the plant in the 70s and early 80s, and seeing what the general kind of social attitude was and where we are now. I'm happy.